I used to believe betrayal had a sound, a creaking floorboard, a slammed door, a guilty whisper. But we had been engaged for 7 months, 7 careful, color-coordinated, Pinterest-fueled months. The venue was booked, the dress was tailored, the seating chart was a nightmare. I was weeks away from becoming Mrs. Carter Hayes. Carter wasn't just any man. He was the kind of man who made waitresses blush and boardroom executives listen. Tall, navy suit confidence, whiskey voice, a smile carved out of strategy. He could sell anything, including himself. And then there was Eden, my younger sister by 3 years. She was always the wild one, the untamable spark to my steady flame. I used to joke that she was a firecracker and I was the match that lit her. But maybe I was just the idiot holding the flame while she burned everything down. It started small. The first time I noticed something, Eden had borrowed one of my dresses. Nothing new there. But when she wore it to dinner with Carter and me, he stared a little too long. Said she looked stunning. Eden just smiled, tucked her hair behind her ear, and thanked him like it meant nothing. I laughed it off. Then came the night I had the flu. I canceled our triple dinner with Eden and Carter's best friend, Nick. Carter still went, said he'd keep Eden company so she wouldn't feel left out. I stayed in bed, sweating, shaking, while my fiancé took my sister to a 5-star restaurant. The next morning, there were no leftovers, no takeout bag, just a lipstick-stained wine glass in the dishwasher and Carter's cologne on the guest pillow. But still, I said nothing. Denial is easy when love is comfortable, when you've spent years crafting a future and your savings on a wedding planner named Celeste. I didn't know then that Eden hadn't just borrowed my dress. She was about to borrow my entire life. 3 weeks before the wedding, I walked into Carter's office to surprise him with a late lunch. I wasn't supposed to be there. He was in meetings all day. His assistant looked up, startled, then quickly plastered on a smile. "He's not in, Madeline," she lied so sweetly it made my teeth ache. I didn't believe her. I knew Carter's phone password. I knew where he kept the spare key to his personal office drawer. I knew everything. Or so I thought. That night, when he came home smelling like chlorine and Eden's vanilla body spray, I waited until he fell asleep. I crept downstairs, took his iPad, and opened his texts. Carter Hayes had sent my sister photos of a beach resort in Santorini. He called it our little secret paradise. There were messages, flirty, familiar, unforgivable. Eden had replied with a selfie, my engagement ring on her finger. Naked in my bathtub. I didn't scream, I didn't cry. I just started recording everything. The next morning, I kissed Carter on the cheek and told him I loved him. Then I took my coffee into the garden and wrote a list. Not a wedding to-do list, not a seating chart. A list of things I had pretended not to know. The way he turned his phone face down when Eden was around. How she started wearing his favorite shade of lipstick, wine red. The night I caught them in the kitchen, whispering and laughing, and Carter said they were just reminiscing. The lingerie I found in his gym bag that wasn't mine. The matching passport holders they thought I wouldn't notice in the back of his drawer. By item 10, my hands were shaking. I was raised in a family where women smiled through everything. Cheating husbands, drunk uncles, backstabbing cousins. We smoothed our skirts and served dessert. We didn't rage. But I wasn't my mother. And this wouldn't be one of those stories. I made 3 phone calls that day. First to Celeste, the wedding planner. I told her we'd need a slight change to the reception flow. Something dramatic.
Second, to an old friend from college, Lex. He was now a rising star at the New York Times and always had an eye for scandal. I fed him just enough to pique his interest. Imagine this, I said. A wealthy groom, a cheating sister, a bride who plays along until the altar. His silence was delicious. Then he whispered, "Tell me everything." Third, I called my grandmother, the only woman in my family who never bit her tongue. She listened, didn't gasp once, and then said, "Darling, make sure you look stunning when you ruin them." So I did. In the days leading up to the wedding, I played my part flawlessly. I sent Eden fake texts from Carter's number, using a burner phone I bought off Craigslist. I told her he'd meet her at a private suite at the hotel 2 nights before the wedding. Just us, our real honeymoon, I typed, pretending to be him. She replied with 3 heart emojis. I scheduled my hair and makeup trial for the same night, at the same hotel, just 3 floors below the room where she'd be waiting. I watched her from the bar lobby. She wore white. She always did. Like it was a game to see how much of my spotlight she could steal before anyone noticed. When she stepped into the elevator, I felt nothing. No rage, no heartbreak, just clarity. That night, I let them dig their own grave. Carter disappeared for 2 hours, told me he had a last-minute work crisis. He came back looking flushed, his shirt slightly wrinkled. He tried to kiss me. I turned my cheek. "You okay?" he asked. "Just wedding nerves," I lied, smiling. We had 1 week left until the ceremony. 1 week to make them believe I was still the fool. The next day, Eden asked to see my wedding dress. She said she wanted to help me accessorize. I said yes. When she zipped it up behind me, she whispered, "You're going to make the most beautiful bride." Her breath smelled like Carter's aftershave. And I smiled through the mirror and said, "You think so?" I never thought I'd have to practice my own vows knowing they were lies. But there I was, sitting in front of my laptop, typing words meant to bind 2 souls while watching Eden and Carter giggle over drinks on my sister's private Instagram story. The caption read, "One last drink before she becomes his forever. Angel, I." And the comments? A stream of heart emojis, smiling faces, OMG cutest couple. No one knew. Not yet. They thought she was the maid of honor. They didn't know she was also the mistress of dishonor. I could have canceled the wedding right then, called it off, outed them, burned everything to the ground. But where's the justice in that? Carter once told me, "The best revenge is doing nothing, just watching them fall." So I decided to take his advice. I hosted a bridal brunch the next morning, my final performance. White linen tables, custom name cards, champagne and crystal flutes. Eden sat beside me, glowing like she was the one getting married. When I tapped my glass for attention, everyone leaned in. I raised my flute. "To love," I said, locking eyes with Carter across the garden. Carter winked. Eden squeezed my hand. I wanted to vomit. But I smiled, took a sip, and started my countdown. 3 days until the wedding. I met with the hotel AV team that evening and asked them to play a special family slideshow during the reception. I handed them a USB marked Memories. They smiled, said it would be no problem. They didn't look inside, but I made sure the best man would. Nick, Carter's college roommate, his drinking buddy, the only man who ever pulled me aside and said, "You sure about this guy?" I met Nick at a coffee shop near the venue. "I need you to be the one to hand me the mic during the toast," I said. He raised an eyebrow. "Why?" I slid a photo across the table. It was Eden, in the hotel suite, wearing my veil, wrapped in Carter's arms. Time-stamped, 2 nights ago.
Nick blinked, his jaw tightened. "You're not canceling?" he asked. "No," I said calmly. "I am just waiting for the perfect moment." 2 days left. Carter and I rehearsed our first dance under soft string lights, just like I had dreamed. He twirled me slowly, his hand warm on my back, his lips brushing my ear. "You're the best thing that's ever happened to me," he whispered. I nodded. "I know." Later that night, I watched him sneak out again. He told me he was going to meet his cousin from out of town. He left his cologne behind this time. Sloppy. Eden didn't come back to the bridal suite that night. She texted me the next morning. "Got caught up with Tyler, old high school friend. So random, lol. See you at rehearsal." She was still lying, and still underestimating me. The rehearsal dinner was filled with laughter, toasts, stories from college. My mother hugged Carter like he was already her son. And then Eden stood to speak. "I just want to say," she began, tearing up, "I've never seen my sister so happy. Carter, you've brought out the best in her. I hope one day I find someone just like you." There was an audible awe across the room. I clapped. So did Carter. No one noticed my nails digging into my palms. But Nick did. After dessert, he slipped me a note. Just one sentence. "Ready when you are." Tomorrow was the wedding, the final act, and I had never been more prepared. I woke up calm, not the kind of calm they write about in bridal magazines. Not joy, not jitters, no butterflies, just clarity. Today was the day I would marry Carter Hayes and destroy him. The wedding prep began at dawn. My bridal suite smelled like roses and hairspray. Celeste's team flitted around me like bees, touching up foundation, curling hair, steaming silk. Eden burst in, wearing silk and sin. Her robe matched mine. She didn't ask. She never had to. "Today's the day," she squealed, throwing her arms around me. I stiffened under her perfume. My perfume. She giggled and said, "You're going to be the most stunning bride ever." I looked her dead in the eyes and replied, "You have no idea." She took it as a compliment. The ceremony was set in a vineyard, golden hour timed perfectly. Carter had picked the location. He said it reminded him of Tuscany, where we once spent a week making love and promises. He stood at the altar in a custom navy tux, flanked by groomsmen. He looked like everything I had once wanted. But now, all I saw was a man who had underestimated me. My father walked me down the aisle. His hand trembled slightly as he whispered, "You sure about this, sweetheart?" "I've never been more sure," I said, and I meant it. Carter smiled as I approached, the kind of smile that could disarm any woman. I smiled back. The vows were short, predictable. I let him go first. He spoke of loyalty, of fate, of how from the moment I met you, I knew you were the one. He even mentioned Eden. She was the first to tell me I'd be lucky to have you. I almost laughed. When it was my turn, I reached into my bouquet and pulled out a small folded paper. I cleared my throat. "My dearest Carter," I began. "I always believed weddings were sacred, that standing before your family and friends meant something, that the words we say here are a promise, not just to love, but to be honest, to be loyal, to protect one another." His eyes softened. "But as it turns out," I continued, "some people protect only themselves. Some people lie. And some people sleep with their bride's sister 2 nights before the wedding." Gasps. Real, audible gasps. Carter froze. Eden stood. The audience turned toward her like a wave. I nodded to Nick. He stepped forward, handed the remote to the AV team. And just like that, the vineyard altar became a screen. Photos, videos, screenshots, all playing in slow, damning detail. Eden, Carter, hotel room, lipstick kisses, messages, my wedding dress on her. My mother screamed. My aunt fainted. Eden ran. Carter turned to me, white as bone. "Madeline, what are you?" I dropped the bouquet. "I'm showing them who you really are." He reached for me. "Don't," I said coldly. "You've touched enough of my family." I turned and walked down the aisle, alone this time, past the shocked guests, past the weeping bridesmaids, past the man who thought he had me fooled. I didn't stop until I reached the gates, and when I did, I looked up at the sky and exhaled the weight of 1,000 lies. It wasn't the wedding I dreamed of, but it was the ending they deserved. News spreads fast when it's scandal, faster when it's dressed in white. By sundown, the vineyard was trending. Runaway bride exposes groom and sister at the altar. Wedding turns into war zone in Sonoma.
infidelity unveiled in front of 200 guests. I didn't check my phone. I didn't cry. I checked into a small hotel 2 hours away and ordered champagne. Not to celebrate the ruined wedding, but to celebrate the woman who walked away before being ruined. Lex from the Times called that night. "I've never seen anything like it," he said, breathless. "It's all over the internet. Someone leaked the projector footage." "Wasn't me," I said with a smirk, "but I'm not mad about it." "You sure you're okay?" "Better than okay." That was only half true, because when the adrenaline faded, the emptiness settled in. Not for Carter, not for Eden, but for the version of me I had killed to survive this. The woman who forgave too easily, who bit her tongue, who spent 7 months planning a wedding for a man who never deserved a single Sunday morning beside her. She was gone now, and in her place was someone new. Someone dangerous. 2 days later, I went home to find my mother sitting on my porch swing. She looked up with tears in her eyes, mascara still smudged. "Madeline," she whispered. I sat beside her. "I didn't know," she said. "God help me, I didn't know." "I believe you," I said softly. She nodded, but her voice cracked. "She was always jealous of you, always wanted what you had, but I never thought." She couldn't finish. I took her hand. "You raised 2 daughters. One became a woman. The other became a warning." That night, Carter tried calling again. 14 times. Then came the texts. "Please, let me explain. She came on to me first. We didn't mean for it to happen. You're blowing this out of proportion. You're embarrassing yourself. And finally, if you think you've won, you haven't." I stared at the last one, then took a screenshot and forwarded it to Lex. Subject line, Chapter 2. He called within minutes. "You want to go public?" he asked. "No," I said. "I want to go bigger." We planned a feature, a piece not about the scandal, but about the system, about how women like me are expected to stay quiet, to forgive, to start over like nothing happened. Not this time. I gave him access to everything: messages, photos, voice notes, hotel bills, timeline receipts. We titled the article, "The Bride Who Refused to Marry a Liar." It dropped on a Sunday. By Monday, Carter's PR firm dropped him. By Tuesday, his company's board called an emergency meeting. By Friday, I got a call from his assistant. "He's spiraling," she whispered. "He's blaming everyone. Said you trapped him." I laughed. "No, sweetie, I freed him." I haven't heard from Eden. Not directly. But I saw the video. A blurry clip of her at a gas station, yelling at a stranger. Mascara streaked down her face, screaming, "I did nothing wrong," into the night air. She looked like a ghost. I wish I could say I felt pity. But ghosts only haunt you if you let them. And I don't. I moved out of our shared condo by the end of the month, sold the ring, deleted the wedding playlist, burned the wedding dress. Literally. I poured wine, lit the hem, and watched it curl into ash. That dress was a promise. And I don't keep promises for liars. Carter showed up at my new apartment 3 weeks after the article dropped. No call, no warning, just a knock on the door like he was still welcome in my world. I opened it slowly, half expecting a courier or a neighbor. But there he was, creased shirt, sunken cheeks, that perfectly styled hair now flattened and desperate. "Madeline," he breathed, like saying my name might rewind time. I leaned against the frame. "I read your article," he said. "Congratulations, you're finally famous for something besides lying." He looked around, as if expecting someone else, security maybe, or another camera crew. "Can we talk?" "No." "Please." His voice cracked. "I lost everything. The board asked me to resign. Clients are pulling out. My mother won't return my calls. And Eden, she's gone." I blinked. "Gone where?" He exhaled. "She ran off, disappeared.
said she couldn't handle the shame. I almost laughed, but I didn't, because this wasn't a comedy. This was the fallout. He stepped forward, eyes red. "Madeline, I messed up. I know that now. But I need you. You were the only real thing in my life. You—" I held up a hand. "No." His mouth opened, but I cut him off. "You don't get to need me now. You don't get to break me and then beg me to help you clean up the mess. You chose her, Carter, over and over again. And now you're standing in front of me like a man who wants forgiveness?" Tears welled in his eyes. I waited. "Say it," I whispered. "What?" "The truth." He looked down. "I slept with her. I fell for her. I thought it was real, but it wasn't. It was lust. And I threw away the only woman who ever truly loved me." I nodded slowly. Then I shut the door. I didn't slam it. I didn't scream. Just a clean, final click. Later that night, I found myself staring at my reflection. No makeup, no pretense. Just me. I touched the spot on my finger where the ring used to be. It didn't hurt anymore. Instead, I felt something stronger than anger. Peace. 2 days later, Eden finally texted. "You ruined us. Hope you're happy. He would have married you anyway. You didn't have to go nuclear. You always needed a bigger stage." I stared at the messages, then replied with a photo. It was me, standing in front of a bookstore window. The headline in bold print, "The woman who said no at the altar and built an empire instead." The article had gone viral. Producers had started calling. Podcast invitations, interview requests. I wasn't just a scandal. I was a story. And the story wasn't over yet. A month passed, then 2. I started a platform, The Second Vow, an online space for women walking away from the wrong love. Within a week, it had 20,000 subscribers. Lex helped me navigate media. Nick, surprisingly, became a friend. And I became someone else, someone stronger. Someone I wish I'd been long before I ever said yes to Carter Hayes. The first vow was a lie. But the second? That one was mine. I didn't make it to a man, or a dress, or an altar. I made it to myself. I vowed never to ignore the voice in my head again. The one that flinched every time Carter silenced me with a kiss. The one that clenched every time Eden stared too long. My life now was quiet, clean, mine. I lived in a 1-bedroom loft with exposed brick and morning sun. I drank black coffee, I wore my hair messy, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I owed anyone perfection. I started writing full-time, articles, essays, interviews, but the second vow took on a life of its own. It wasn't just a blog anymore. It became a movement. Women from everywhere wrote in. I walked away from my wedding 2 days before the ceremony. I found out he was cheating and left with our newborn. I said no after 10 years of being told I was nothing. Their stories poured in, raw and unfiltered, and I answered every single one. I never told them what to do. I didn't offer advice. I just wrote back, "You're not crazy, you're not alone, and you're not weak." Then came the day a package arrived at my door. No name, no note. Inside was a small velvet box. I opened it and laughed. The ring. The ring. My engagement ring. Returned. No message, just the band, sparkling coldly against black velvet. I stared at it for a long time. Then I snapped a photo, posted it on the second vow, and captioned it, "Some returns are worth celebrating." It went viral in 40 minutes. The world started to shift. Women were telling their truth and being believed. And somewhere in the middle of it all, I found myself standing on a stage in Los Angeles, holding a microphone in front of 3,000 women at the Voices Unheard Summit. The spotlight was warm,
the applause thunderous, but I didn't flinch. "I thought my story ended when he chose her," I said into the mic. But it didn't. It began when I chose me. The crowd stood, cheered, some wept. I saw Lex in the front row, grinning, and next to him, Nick, hands in his pockets, watching me like I was a different species. Afterward, I walked off stage breathless. Nick pulled me aside. "You're something else now," he said. "No," I corrected. "I'm just finally me." He tilted his head. "You know, I always thought you deserved better." "You were right," I said, "but I had to see it myself." He nodded. "Dinner sometime." I raised an eyebrow. "Is that a question or a headline?" He smiled. "Just dinner. No secrets, no scandals." I thought about it. About the girl I used to be, the one who planned everything, who forgave too much, who said yes when she should have screamed no. And I looked at the woman I was now. "Maybe," I said, stepping past him, "but next time I'll pick the restaurant." It was always in the quiet moments when I remembered her, the version of me that once begged for scraps of love. She used to sit in the passenger seat of Carter's car, smiling politely while he ignored her for business calls. She used to shrink when Eden walked into a room, worried she wasn't enough. She used to cry in the shower just so no one would hear. That girl felt like a ghost now, a familiar shape in the rearview mirror, but I didn't miss her. A few months had passed since the wedding that never was. I had been asked to appear on a morning talk show, live with Rachel and Camilla. They called it the Empowered Exit segment. America needs to hear from the woman who walked away at the altar and built a movement, the producer said. You're the voice everyone's listening to. It was surreal. Hair and makeup, limo rides, mics clipped to my blouse. But I wasn't nervous. Not anymore. I'd already lived my worst day, and I'd survived it with style. On set, Rachel leaned in during the interview. "Do you regret it?" she asked, blinking slowly. I smiled. "No," I said. "I regret ever thinking I couldn't survive without him." The crowd clapped. The hosts nodded. Somewhere, maybe, Carter was watching. I hoped he was. Later that evening, I sat by myself on my balcony, legs tucked beneath a blanket, laptop open. I was reading the latest stories submitted to the second vow. One caught my eye. I found out he was sleeping with my best friend. I almost forgave him. But then I found your article. Thank you for helping me say no. My eyes burned, not from pain, but from recognition, because I knew what it cost to walk away. The world didn't praise women like us at first. They called us bitter, cold, too dramatic. But now, they called us brave. Then the message came. A single email. Subject, from her. Sender, eden.blackburn01 @ I stared at it for a long time. Then clicked. You win. Is that what you want to hear? You always had to win. You always had to be the good one, the strong one. I never wanted him to fall for me, but he did. And you know what? I didn't say no. But now, you're everyone's hero, and I'm nothing.
Hope you enjoy your fame. I hope it keeps you warm at night. There was no apology. Not really. Just venom, jealousy, echoes of her own self-hatred. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened a new post on the second vow. Title, You Don't Have to Respond to People Who Never Said Sorry. And I wrote, Forgiveness isn't owed, not to those who shatter you without remorse. You don't need to answer their emails, their messages, their ghostly hands knocking on your door. You don't owe closure to people who gave you chaos. I clicked publish, closed the laptop, and smiled. That weekend, I went to dinner with Nick. He wore a navy button-down and brought me a second glass of wine without asking. You look lighter, he said. I feel it, I replied. Do you miss it? He asked gently. The life you almost had? I thought about the villa in Tuscany Carter had promised me, the kitchen I never cooked in, the smile I faked for years. And I answered, not even a little. Closure doesn't always knock politely. Sometimes it crashes into your life when you least expect it. In a cafe, in a courtroom, or, in my case,
in the middle of a grocery aisle holding a box of strawberries. I turned the corner, already rehearsing a mental recipe, when I saw him. Carter. Thinner, paler, dressed in an oversized hoodie and yesterday's jeans. He looked like a man aging in reverse, power stripped, arrogance rotting. He froze when he saw me. I didn't. I picked up my strawberries and kept walking. But of course, he followed. "Madeline," he said, like it was a plea. I turned slowly. "Still alive, I see." "I need 5 minutes." "You had 5 years." "I was a fool. And now you're a memory." He ran a hand through his messy hair. "I didn't come to fight." "No?" I said, crossing my arms. "Then why are you chasing ghosts in aisle 7? He looked down. His voice softened. "You're right, I did love you. But I didn't know how to be worthy of you." "That's the first true thing you've ever said to me." He looked up, eyes heavy. "I've lost everything." "I know," I said. "I read the article." He laughed bitterly. "You always had the last word." I leaned in, voice like steel. "No, Carter, I just finally earned it." And then, just like that, I turned around and walked away again. No theatrics, no anger, just freedom. That night, I wrote a new post on the second vow. Title: "Closure doesn't always come wrapped in sorry." Sometimes you meet the people who hurt you long after the wounds have scarred, and when they speak, their words feel small, because you've already forgiven yourself, and that's the only closure you ever needed. It became my most shared post yet. Nick called around midnight. "Just saw the strawberries post. Everything okay?" I smiled at the phone. "It's all perfect." He hesitated. "Are you sure?" Carter's apology meant nothing, I said, but my reaction meant everything. A week later, I was invited to speak at a university. The topic: rebuilding after betrayal. After the lecture, a young woman approached me, tears in her eyes. She said, "Your story gave me the courage to walk away." I took her hands. "Then your story just started." She nodded. "I thought I needed him, but what I really needed was me." And in that moment, I saw her. Not just her, but every version of me I had left behind. The girl who stayed, the woman who ran, the warrior who chose herself. After the event, I walked outside and found Nick leaning against a car. He handed me a coffee, just the way I liked it. "You looked like a damn storm up there," he said. "Good storm or bad storm?" "The kind that changes the season." I sipped, eyes on the horizon. For once, I wasn't chasing anything. I was exactly where I was meant to be. There's a strange irony in canceling your own wedding and still dreaming about it. Not the man, not the heartbreak, but the beauty of it all. The idea of it. The candlelit aisle, the string quartet, the silence right before you say, "I do." So I gave myself a gift. Not a new dress, not a new man, a new moment. It started with a message from the director of the Reclaimed Foundation, a nonprofit that supports women recovering from betrayal and public shaming. "I read your story," she wrote, "and I had an idea. An idea that turned into something bigger. A fundraiser, a gala, a night of light after so much darkness. We called it The Unwedding. A celebration of every woman who walked away. A wedding with no groom, no lies, just truth. I wore ivory, not as a symbol of purity, but of power. The dress was sleek, no veil, no corset, just me. Nick stood at the back of the hall, hands in his pockets, watching me walk the aisle. There was no ceremony, only a podium. I took the mic. "I was supposed to marry a man last spring," I said. "Instead, I married a truth. That I don't need a partner to be whole. I don't need a promise to be enough. I needed one vow, and it was to myself." Applause. Cheers. Some women cried. And when I stepped down, I felt lighter than I ever had, even on the day I walked away. The night turned electric. Hundreds of guests, dozens of stories. No shame. Lex introduced me to a publisher who said, "You're the voice of this generation. We need your book." Nick handed me champagne and whispered, "Told you you'd be legendary." I smiled. "Still just getting started," I said. Later, I slipped out to the balcony for air. The city sparkled below. My heels dangled from my fingertips. Nick found me there. "You know," he said, "I always thought weddings were a little overrated." I laughed. Agreed. But this one meant something. I turned to him. "You really mean that?" He nodded. "You turned your worst day into someone else's beginning. That's rare." We stood in silence for a while. Then he said, "You ever think about trying again? Real love?" I looked up at him, eyes calm. "I'm not afraid of love," I said. "I'm just no longer afraid of not having it." He smiled. "Still, if someone ever earned a real I do, it's you." I didn't answer, just clinked my glass against his. "To the unwedding," I said. "To the woman who didn't want one," he replied. I didn't expect to fall in love again. Not with the man, not so soon, not after that kind of wreckage. But life has a way of slipping in through the cracks you thought would never heal. It started slow, like spring thawing out a long frozen heart. Nick and I had never called it anything. We had no labels, no expectations. He brought me coffee, I brought him peace, and somehow that became enough. One afternoon, we were walking through the Sunday market. The sun was sharp. Music floated from a jazz trio in the corner. Nick paused at a stall and held up a tiny glass sculpture, a woman dancing in red heels, arms wide open. "She reminds me of you," he said. "Why?" I asked, amused. "She's unbreakable, but somehow still soft." I didn't respond. I just reached for his hand. We walked like that for hours, through crowds, through silence, through the possibility of something real. Later, at dinner, he looked across the table. "You're not afraid anymore, are you?" I took a breath. "No, not of love, not of loneliness, not of what comes next." He nodded. "I'm not asking for forever," he said. "Just tomorrow, and maybe the day after." It wasn't a proposal. It was better. It was honesty. That night, I lay in bed thinking of all the things I once begged Carter for. A conversation, a gesture, a choice. And here I was now, given everything I never had to ask for. The next morning, I woke to a text from Eden. "I'm leaving the country, maybe for good. I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope you find peace." I never did. I stared at the screen for a while. Then I deleted the message. Not out of spite, not out of victory, out of closure. The kind you give yourself. That same week, I signed the publishing deal. The book would be titled The Second Vow: How I Chose Myself at the Altar. The cover would be minimalist. No wedding rings, no men. Just a woman walking away, head held high. At the book launch, Nick stood beside me. "You nervous?" he whispered. "No," I said. "I've already lived every chapter." A woman in the crowd raised her hand during the Q&A. "What would you say to someone still deciding whether to walk away?" I smiled softly. "Ask yourself one question," I said. "If nothing ever changes, will you be okay staying?" Silence. Then applause. Thunderous and full. That night, back in our apartment, Nick poured me wine. "You ever miss who you were before all this?" he asked. I thought about it. The girl who wanted love so badly she almost married a lie. "No," I said. "I miss who I could have been if I had left sooner." He nodded. "Then here's to the woman who didn't wait." We toasted. And I knew. This was love. The kind that didn't require pain first. The kind that didn't need secrets or schemes. The kind that didn't lie. They say healing isn't linear, but for me, it felt like a door I finally chose not to open again. The door was my past, and behind it lived memories I'd memorized, like a song I didn't even like, but kept playing anyway, until I stopped. I was invited to speak at a retreat in Italy, ironically in Tuscany. The same place Carter once promised we'd honeymoon. The same folder he kept hidden in his laptop, marked Future with Her.
I had almost let him sell me that fantasy. Almost. Now I was standing in the center of it, alone, but not lonely. The retreat was held in a converted villa atop a hill, olive groves below, sunflowers all around. There were 50 women in attendance, different countries, different languages, same story. Each one had left something, or someone, who made them forget their worth. On the second day, I led a workshop titled The Power of Walking Away. I stood barefoot in the grass, the sky stretching endlessly above us, and said, "You don't need to wait for them to say sorry. You don't need the applause. You don't even need the closure. All you need is a yes to yourself, a yes loud enough to drown out every lie they ever told you." Some women cried. Some laughed. All of them understood. After the workshop, I walked through the vineyard path alone. The wind carried the scent of crushed grapes and wild herbs. And suddenly, quietly, I felt her, the girl I used to be. She wasn't haunting me anymore. She was proud. That night, Nick called. "How's the land of wine and women who glow from the inside out?" I smiled into the phone. "It's everything I didn't know I needed." "You sound different," he said. "Do I?" "Yeah, like someone who finally forgave herself." I paused. "I think I have," I whispered. The next morning, I woke early and wrote a letter I would never send. To Eden. "You hurt me in a way I didn't know people could. But I see you now, not as a villain, not as a sister, just as a broken person who didn't know how to love herself. I hope you find peace. I already have. Madeline." I folded it and buried it under a stone by the olive tree near the villa. It didn't need to be read. It just needed to be released. On the flight home, I looked out the window and whispered, "Thank you." To the heartache, to the ruin, to the version of me who kept going, even when she had every reason to collapse. I didn't need a plane ticket to escape anymore. I had already left everything that no longer served me. And this time, I wasn't looking back. I used to wait for closure like it was a package that might not arrive. But somewhere along the way, I realized, closure doesn't come from them. It comes from you. From waking up one day and choosing not to hate them anymore. Not because they deserve peace, but because you do. After I returned from Italy, things moved quickly. The second Vown hit 100,000 members. My book tour sold out. I got an email from a Hollywood producer who wanted to adapt my story into a limited series. "We don't want a victim," she wrote. "We want a phoenix." And I thought, finally, someone gets it. One morning, as I was signing copies at an indie bookstore in Chicago, a woman approached with trembling hands. She looked to be in her 60s. Silver streaks in her hair, deep-set eyes, and something fragile in her expression. "I've been married 39 years, she whispered, handing me the book, "and I've been lying to myself for 38 of them." I looked up, heart aching. "I stayed because I thought it was too late to leave, but after reading your story, I'm not so sure anymore." I took her hand. "It's never too late to tell the truth," I said, "especially to yourself." That night, I sat in a hotel room with the city lights below me and wrote a letter. This one wasn't for Eden or Carter. It was for me. "Dear Madeline, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for every time I silenced you to keep the peace, for every red flag I painted white, for every moment I begged to be chosen when I had the power to choose myself all along. I'm sorry I let love become a battlefield. But I'm so proud of the woman you've become. You didn't just survive. You built something sacred from the ashes. You are enough. Me." I folded the letter and tucked it into the back cover of my journal. A quiet promise. A vow I never needed an altar for. Later that week, I went to dinner with Nick again. We weren't anything official. Not labeled, not rushed, just two people who showed up for each other consistently. We talked about silly things. He teased me about being on Good Morning America. I teased him about still using an old flip phone as a backup in case the grid goes down.
And then, in a rare moment of stillness, he reached across the table. "Can I ask you something?" I raised an eyebrow. "Sure." "What would you say if I told you I wasn't afraid of forever anymore?" I paused. "Then I'd say, let's not talk about forever." He blanked. "Let's just talk about today," I continued. "And if we both still want this tomorrow, we'll meet there too." His eyes softened. Deal. When I got home, I stood in front of the mirror for a long time. No makeup, no performance, just me. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a woman who'd been betrayed. I felt like a woman who had come home to herself. It came in a small gray velvet box. No kneeling, no flash mob, no string quartet. Just Nick, standing in the kitchen on a Tuesday morning, barefoot, holding coffee in one hand and the box in the other. "I know we said we don't believe in fairy tales," he said, "but if I could give you a second beginning, this would be it." He opened the box. Inside wasn't a diamond. It wasn't even traditional. It was a simple gold band, engraved on the inside with one phrase, "On your terms." I blinked, felt my breath catch. "Before you say anything," he added, "this doesn't mean ownership. It doesn't mean losing yourself again. It just means I want to walk beside you. No vows, no altar, just us. Today, tomorrow, and whatever comes after." I didn't cry. I didn't run. I didn't panic. I smiled, and I said yes. Not to a man, to a choice. The media went wild when the announcement came out. Not about a wedding, but about the Second Vow Foundation, a real, legal nonprofit, helping women transition out of toxic relationships, providing therapy, housing, legal support, and something even more valuable, a safe beginning. We launched with thousands in seed donations. Lex ran a feature in the Times called "The Bride Who Became a Shelter." It was the most read article of the year. And I finally stopped being the woman whose fiancé ran off with her sister. Now I was something bigger, a survivor, a leader, a lighthouse. I never heard from Eden again, not directly. But a mutual friend told me she was living somewhere in Bali, teaching yoga, selling handmade candles. They said she didn't talk about Carter. As for Carter, last I heard, he was trying to launch a startup in Miami. It flopped. Lex sent me a screenshot of a blog headline, "From CEO to Couchsurfing, the Fall of Carter Hayes." I didn't smile. I didn't scoff. I just closed the tab and went back to writing. Some stories end exactly how they should, and some people dig their own graves better than anyone else ever could. That weekend, Nick and I sat on the balcony, watching the sky bruise into sunset. "Did you ever think we'd end up here?" he asked. I shook my head. "No, I thought I'd be alone, or still trying to prove my worth to someone who never saw it." He reached for my hand. "But look at you now." I looked at the ring. Simple, gold, light. And I realized, for the first time in my life, I had chosen something that didn't hurt to wear. I used to wonder what my wedding day would look like. The dress, the guests, the man. But the truth is, the most important day of my life didn't include a groom. It included me, standing in the mirror, whole, unapologetic, free. A year had passed since the day I walked away from Carter and Eden. 12 months of rebuilding, reclaiming, of learning how to be loved without first being broken. The Second Vow Foundation was now in 6 cities. We'd housed 312 women, helped 97 safely leave abusive relationships, provided scholarships, and one of our members, Dahlia, just launched her own bakery. She named it No More Crumbs. I cried when I saw the sign, because that used to be me, the girl who accepted crumbs and called it dinner. My book became a bestseller. I was invited to speak at Columbia University's commencement. When I took the stage in my white jumpsuit and red heels, I looked out at a sea of young faces, some still innocent, some already scarred. And I said, "Let me tell you what strength is. It's not staying in the fire to prove you're fireproof. It's walking out of the flames and realizing your worth didn't burn. The auditorium gave me a standing ovation. But more importantly, afterward, a girl no older than 20 whispered to me, "I left him last night. Your words gave me the courage." And just like that, I knew. The pain had been worth it. Every scar, every silent cry in the dark. Because it led to this. To impact, to legacy, to something far more beautiful than the life I once begged for. Nick and I still don't wear rings on our fingers. Not because we don't love each other, but because we don't need tradition to define us. We wake up together. We drink too much coffee. We challenge each other to live loudly. He supports my fire. I protect his softness. No games, no power plays, no pretending. Just partnership. Real. Earned. Safe. And on the anniversary of the day I left Carter at the altar, I took myself on a walk through Central Park. No makeup, no press, no distractions. Just me. The woman who was once shattered, now standing tall. I stopped by the lake, watching the reflection ripple with the breeze. I whispered, "Thank you." Not to anyone in particular, but to the journey, to the lesson, to the girl who refused to be erased. I didn't just survive the worst day of my life. I turned it into the beginning of my best. And I didn't walk down the aisle that day, but I walked myself home.